with our very good friend who is joining us from his Minecraft Lego bunker. That's the safest spot in America. Stephen Yates, always good to see you, my friend. Thanks so much for joining us. And you guys know Mr. Yates. He was worked in the Bush White House. He advised former VP Dick Cheney. So it's good to have you on the Dana Show. I've got to get your reaction to this. I would just think if there was a real concern to mitigate transmission of any variant, that maybe perhaps one of the first things that you would do is go to the southern border, particularly when you know that they're not testing everyone and at taxpayer expense, people are being transported throughout the country. That sounds like a really good way to spread it throughout. What are your thoughts on this, and how seriously do you take the administration on wanting to control this?
Well, it's really, really difficult to take the administration seriously. I mean, there's just a lot of Americans are just hungry for some clear common sense when it comes to what are the rules, what's happening out here, what can I do to sensibly be smart, safe, protect my health, protect my family. All that stuff is pretty rational, mommy, daddy kind of conversations that a lot of families are having. And you got on the one hand, people that are freaked out beyond belief about airports, and you want to go into the most authoritarian regime in America right now, get onto an airplane and listen to what is like martial law being declared if you do anything between bites or sips or things like that. And then common sense Americans look at, here's a steady stream of people coming into our country. And just like the coronavirus doesn't really care what race or ethnicity you are, and apparently people of color are disproportionately not as vaccinated, that when it comes to this kind of thing, a lot of minority communities in the United States look at it and say, wait a minute, we don't agree with illegal immigration. It's unfair. We don't agree with these people getting benefits that we are having to work hard to try to pay for. We came the right way. And when it comes to this virus and immigration, both are perfect examples of where the left has completely left common sense in the rearview mirror. I think it's sad for them. I don't wish them success, but it's especially sad for all those average families that are just trying to figure out what in the devil is going on and how can I go back to just being normal and taking care of my family, getting kids back to school, and going back to work. Yeah. So, I mean, it's been a year and a half. Come on, man.
Yeah. What does it say to you, Stephen, that we've seen video of people in Germany protesting against these vax passes. In France, there was video that came out that showed armed police. Apparently, they were more proactive about this than they were terrorism pre-Charlie Hebdo. But they were going throughout the cafes, restaurants, everywhere else in Paris, asking for people's proof of vaccination status, and everybody had to show them their Vax Pass app on their phone. And people have been protesting against that. Thereby, I think there was like over 500,000 people that turned out for a protest in Paris over this weekend. That you don't ever hear about anything like that happening in Europe, but now it's happening, it seems, everywhere, not right. Just in Europe and Germany, and also in Britain, where they've had millions of people turn out for protests. That's so unusual. What does that suggest to you about what's the sentiment with all of this?
Well, number one, it's really important for all of us as Americans to recognize that we're not handling this situation in isolation. And it's not just the personalities of American politics, the back and forth between the White House and any of the governors. The whole world is dealing with a lot of this stuff. And it's important to kind of take the personalities out of it and just look at what's really going on. And in a lot of these countries, they have a history of creeping authoritarianism becoming a lot less creeping. And it's not that long ago for them. And we were told 2 weeks and we'll stop the spread or we'll flatten the curve. We're told, hey, just give in a little bit here and it'll all be well. And you're a conspiracy theorist if you think that there's some kind of bigger design to sort of impose greater controls on your life. And of course, this is going to be voluntary. It's not even legal, Nancy Pelosi said, to compel people to get vaccines. And, less than a year later, people are being compelled to do a lot of different things. And I don't know how the New York mayor is going to have people carded based on vaccines to whether they can go into a restaurant. So to me, it's breathtaking. But around the world, in a lot of even postmodern Europe, people are starting to show up and protest and say, no more. This is going too far. And really, a lot of these common sense families, they know there's bigger risks in their life than this. We shouldn't minimize the virus, But there's lots of other bad things in the world that we deal with all the time. And somehow the myopia about this has just made people's political brains turn off.
Oh, that's a good point as well. Speaking of the virus and elsewhere too, the head of the Wuhan lab, this was from The Hill this morning, they warned that, well, there's going to be more coronavirus mutations coming. I think we've kind of already known that. They said that they're monitoring the Lambda variant that's becoming a prominent strain in South America. Xi Jinping, who is the bat lady, told Chinese state media that the virus is going to continue to mutate. If they told me that the sky was blue, I wouldn't trust them. I only trust anything about variants because we see this coming up in the headlines now. But they also have been doubling down, saying that apparently the whole origin, they've been doing this from the get-go, the whole origin of this from the Delta to the Alpha, it could be U.S. military. And they keep pushing that on Twitter, not flagged as misinformation, mind you. I was suspended for sharing a post about text suppression, not even talking about Hunter Biden and the New York Post story. But they can have their Chinese communist leaders get on Twitter and actually accuse the U.S. military of starting this. No problems. Twitter lets it stay. Your thoughts?
Yeah, that's absolutely outrageous. And I wish it was just a one-off kind of thing, but we've seen it over and over and over. China's wolf warriors can get out there in the Twitter sphere and say all kinds of outrageous, offensive, and weird things. All of us that have any profile on Twitter, and I'm no big deal when it comes to this, we get dragged behind all kinds of commie trucks. People, all these bots and wacko people want to say all kinds of threatening things. They want to say that I'm a this-ist or a that-ist, and I don't know anything about these places. I just speak the language. I've got a multi-ethnic family. Of course, I don't know anything about race relations or foreign countries and all of that. But so we got all that madness. We know that it's sort of like a hellfire on the internet, on Twitter. But how is it that the terrorists of Iran can say things with impunity, and these very obvious, dangerous lies coming out of China don't even get flagged? I mean, I can't even keep followers on Twitter, and they seem to be able to push this stuff out and get amplified. So go figure.
Yeah, it's incredibly brazen. Also brazen. And then I'm gonna switch gears and ask you about Afghanistan. China is now warning of countermeasures because the U.S. agreed to this arms deal with Taiwan, $750 million arms sale, which I'm actually pleased that the Biden administration allowed this to go through. I'll give credit where due. They did something right. Good on them. But this, obviously, we've talked about how China feels about Taiwan. They believe that Taiwan is part of them. They don't like treating Taiwan as its separate, owned, sovereign entity. The sale, I mean, it's a pretty big deal, particularly for Taiwan. But Beijing is ramping up its commitment to that one China policy. They're threatening countermeasures. What are they? I mean, what kind of countermeasures? I mean, what do you think that they're going to do?
Well, I would really encourage people to read the articles that talk about this, because it's sort of like an experience where you can enter Alice in Wonderland, and you can listen to these guys say, on the one hand, they're deeply weak and threatened by less than $1 billion of weaponry being sold to Taiwan. So, I mean, China's been investing probably more than $1 trillion in its own military, but less than $1 billion of materiel to 23 million people just scares the pants off of them. And so there's that. And anyone, I'm not making this up, anyone can read this stuff. And then they say, well, this is very, very threatening and destabilizing, and so we're going to take countermeasures. What countermeasures? What are you going to do? And the New York Times and others are amplifying, well, Taiwan's next. Taiwan's next. I don't want Taiwan to be next, and I want people to sort of know something about Taiwan, but at the same time, this is really more of a China story. These guys are the destabilizing power. They are the source of different disinformation and threats. I have a friend, Christian Whiten, who put out a piece that was talking about the trillions of dollars China has cost the world by letting the virus out into the world. Why isn't there a national conversation about the government that unleashed this destruction on the planet? We shouldn't be, and I agree with you, give the Biden administration credit for moving forward with this weapons sale. But holy cow, we got to get the rest of the world amped up to push back on China. This isn't just a Taiwan story.
Yeah, it amazes me. We're talking to our friend Stephen Yates at Yates Comms on Twitter. it amazes me that I don't believe that other nations are scared of China. Well, maybe some of them are, but the behavior is that they're too scared to destabilize the association, whether it's trade or whatever, with China. So we're just going to pretend that all of this, even if, let's just, being at most generous, even if it was all accident, lab escape, which I will totally proudly admit to having a tinfoil hat about this and disagreeing that it was on accident at all. But let's just say generously that it was on accident. Still, the way that they handled it was absolutely criminal, reckless, irresponsible. The way they bullied other countries away from the table during the forum with the World Health Organization when we were trying to figure out ways to contain this and handle it. And yet we're going to celebrate them with an Olympics in Beijing? This is wild. So what is the reasoning behind no one else wanting to stand? Is it really they're afraid of trade agreements?
Yeah, I mean, really, we're talking about whether they committed first-degree murder or manslaughter. It's not a question about whether they killed people.
Right.
It's disappointing that it's so easy for them to slip this knot and just sort of pretend that they don't even have any responsibility whatsoever. And as you mentioned, they can try to flip the narrative and say, no, this came out of Fort Detrick in the United States, and just making that up. But really, at least my experience in government has told me that people are just addicted to the warm bath of conventional thinking. And the easy answer in government is either say no or just keep doing what we've always done. If you come in and say, oh, no, this has been bad for the United States, and for 50 years we've been doing something wrong and we need to change, oh, that sounds like a lot of work. That sounds like a lot of people have to admit that they were wrong. We can't do that. We just got to keep doing what we're doing. Whether you're in the German government or the American government or the Japanese government, even among friends that face direct threats, they just go along. But you can't blame them entirely, because the corporate world, the big corporate brands and the financiers in Wall Street and others are completely in bed with the soothing scenario about China. You want to hear some shocking things? Listen to the assumptions that Wall Street's top executives have about dealing with China. Listen to the CEO of Nike talk about dealing with China. And as an American, I just prepare you, you're going to be surprised that anyone who lives and breathes under this Constitution would think these thoughts.
Oh, completely. Last quick question for you. Stephen Yates, you can find him at YatesComs on Twitter. Afghanistan, more cities, more strongholds that formerly we controlled, United States, and even our partners in UK, et cetera, now falling to the Taliban. I know there's a lot of back and forth in the Republican Party as to whether we should have pulled out or whether that was the correct way to do so. I mean, we were there for 20 years, and it's like if we don't at some point people have to fight for themselves. But at the same time, you don't want to make sure that you want to make sure all of your efforts those 20 years weren't in vain. What are your thoughts about this? And I mean, is this pretty much you can't force people to fight for themselves or to practice democracy? Your thoughts?
Well, number one, I don't think that we should have had some kind of an expectation that we were going to create a democracy. Our job was to destroy those who attacked us and to try to degrade the capability of anyone to kind of aggregate that kind of ability ever again, or at least in the near future. And so our mission was a negative one, not a positive one. And I think we did a pretty good job, especially in the initial phases of what that limited mission was. I am concerned about what the people of Afghanistan face. I'm saddened that all of that sacrifice may be getting rolled back. At the same time, it's not the Afghan people alone. There are people in the region, people in other countries who need to be filling in. We just cannot operate as a country that we're going to go into indefinite missions. You can't have Americans deployed in active combat who were born after that war began. It's just not how we were made as Americans, and it's not the role we should seek in the world. So I feel bad about this rollback. At the same time, I think it's very, very important that the United States come to an end and withdraw. I would add one caveat. We should have honored those who worked with us, those interpreters and others who took great risks. They should have been taken care of. I have no understanding or sympathy for the decision makers who left those people basically to be victims of this new authoritarian regime.
I agree. They helped a lot, helped us so much. Stephen Yates, always good to see you, my friend. I hope you have a great rest of your week. Follow him at Yatescom on Yatescom, COMMS on Twitter. Stephen, good to see you.
Thank you, Dana. Take care.
You too.